All right, here we are again, the College Football Players Association podcast. Once again, we are doing the Alumni Member of the Month series. This is for the month of September. We continue to plug and chug through the college football season. We have a very special guest today. We have alumni member of the association, a lifetime member of the association, a member of our leadership committee, alumni member leadership committee, Tremayne Anchrum. Tremayne, it is great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
Absolutely. All right, so we start the same way with every alumni member, and we say, all right, what was a playing career? Now, for you, playing career is still ongoing, and so I want you to kind of take us back to the beginning of college, and then walk us through to the present. So, who'd you play for, position, all of that, but just kind of let people know what's your journey been.
Yeah, my journey's been very interesting. I came out of high school. I wasn't very highly recruited early on, but then as things kind of picked up, I got more and more, big time offers, things like that, and I ended up settling on going to Clemson, and that was one of the best decisions I made. Not only just because of all of winning and the trophies and everything like that, but that was pretty nice.
I bet, right?
Oh yeah, like come on now. But we had a lot of fun, and I met a lot of lifetime relationships that are gonna, you know, be very, very giving to me throughout my life, and really grateful for those. I came in as a freshman, and I started a game, and I played a lot. It was in rotation with another freshman. I was a swing tackle, back and forth. I was undersized, so obviously, everything you do, you have to prove it again, and earn it again. And with the defenses we had and the players that we had at Clemson, that was not easy. So
Yeah, I bet.
oh my God, like those, you can ask Justin Fasinelli, like those are guys that are still producing in the NFL today. Um,
Wow. Yeah, because what year did you start at Clemson?
I enrolled in mid-year in 2016, January 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a good little mix of some of the old Clemson and a little bit of the new Clemson. So I kind of had my fair share of seeing a lot of people come and go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was really fun. I ended up was a on and off starter my sophomore year, obviously playing mostly right tackle, but I also did some left whenever it was needed. Um, that was a great year too. We had, Kelly Bryant stepped in after Deshaun. He did really great job. I mean, wonderful. The dude was a baller, and he was in a tough spot following Deshaun, but he did great. He led us to a playoff, and I was kind of getting into my groove, figuring out what kind of player I wanted to be. Um, I kind of came alive more my junior year. I really solidified myself full time and started playing really good ball. And then we went 15-0, and I had an all conference year, and that was great. Really stepped into myself as a leader and figured out who I was as a person, and started kind of just leaning more into being uncomfortable and growing in those areas. Not only as a football player, but as a scholar, as in the community, as a professional. Started taking on more jobs. I had like a couple of on-campus jobs at the time, just to kind of see like, okay, what do I enjoy doing outside of the game? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, what else do I like to do, and how else do I can, separate myself as a professional? Um,
Mhm.
yeah, Clemson was really good at those opportunities. We all just don't come out like you, Jason, and just get your professionalism.
You gotta learn. I'm older than you. I'm way older than you too. Wisdom, it comes with ages, right?
You don't look like it, but it might be the glasses. It's the glasses that are doing
Sorry.
it.
Here, yeah, take 'em off.
No.
All right. So Clemson, what final year was final year the second national championship year, right?
No, that was the first national championship was my freshman year with Deshaun.
Okay.
Second national championship was junior year. That was great.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, I was really
Yeah. Not many people could say, "Oh yeah, my first and then my second." Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
come
Right.
on. We were rolling. All right.
Yeah,
We
you guys were
we were
rolling.
doing
No
it.
doubt. No doubt.
And then my senior year, we went to a third with Trevor.
Mm.
Um, and we ended up losing, but it was still I mean, a record-setting year. We went 29-0, and I think I only lost like 4 games my whole college career. So yeah, ending ending it like that wasn't too shabby. All right,
That
so
is not too shabby.
that was
All right,
nice.
and then you figure there's like only you can only go down from there, but then of course you get drafted. And what year did you get drafted? You were fifth round. Am I remembering that right? Sixth round.
I was seventh round. I
Okay,
was.
seventh round, and you went to the Rams,
Mhm,
and so there wasn't anywhere to go but down because you went up from there pretty much, right?
I did. Yeah, I did. We had a. I was one of those. It was 2020 too. That's when I got drafted. So that was like a crazy year of COVID. Everybody remembers where they were. Where were you when
Uh-huh.
COVID happened, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to go there.
gosh, we were just barely making it. I was coming out of college, did the combine, did the pro day, did the senior bowl, did all of that.
Hmm.
And, the week of, my visits for all these teams, COVID happens and I don't do any visits. I don't
Oh
do
my god.
anything like that. I'm just doing straight Zoom ins, just
Oh,
here, right here. And you can't really establish your presence and who you are
mm-mm,
over a Zoom.
mm-mm.
Um, mm-mm. So, but it ended up working out. Got drafted to the Rams, and was with them for 4 years. Won a Super Bowl. That was awesome. I broke my leg my third year. That was tough. That's when I kind of like climbed. That seventh round grind is a little different. You don't really get a lot of opportunities. You don't really get a lot of looks and stuff like that. But I had earned it tooth and nail every single year. I made the team in almost every offensive line spot I could think of other than center. But then I get to a spot where I'm kind of, you know, I'm a starter, in the league on a Super Bowl contending team, and then go out that first game as a starter, and I get my leg broken on something
Oh
really
my
unfortunate.
god.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was your first game. It was like one of the first snaps, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had a 400 pounder come from behind me and fall on my ankle, shattered it in like 3 places. It was rough. It was very bad.
Because I remember. All right, let's pick up there. Was that your first? Because a lot of this next month, October, we're going to be doing a lot of sort of health, player safety, player welfare issues. You have a comparison. I think that you're first person on this podcast to have a comparison, college versus pro, in terms of
Mhm.
thinking about those issues, right? Um, was that your first major injury, or did you have things in college that happened as well?
Nah, that was my first major injury ever.
Wow. Okay. So even in terms of comparison, you don't have much to compare by then.
No, I don't. Most long term injury I've had in college is probably like a high ankle sprain, like grade two,
Mhm.
and I still strapped it up and finished the season.
Goodness gracious. All right. So I remember, all right, you were already with the association at that time. You and I had been talking for probably maybe a year, year and a half.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember texting you and you saying over text, "Oh, I did first game of the season, right? Got injured." And then I saw you in LA maybe 3, 4 months after that. So you'd been through a bunch of the recovery process. But I remember something that's really stuck with me that I don't think a lot of people understand is you said, "Hey, at least they didn't cut me when you had that injury," right? And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think a lot of people understand that. So, like, explain to people, like, from your experience, from what you saw with other guys, from just your sort of your long career now as a player, talk people through that. You got this. You finally get a chance to start. You're in your third year, literally like one of the first snaps of the game, and you're out with this major injury. What could have happened at that point? What was the trajectory that did happen? And also, what was the trajectory that could have happened for somebody in your situation?
Yeah, for me, like I was seventh rounder. I was always like, trying to push the cuffs of making the roster and making the team. And when you get hurt, one of a couple of things could happen. One, you can be put on IR. You obviously can rehab with the team. You can work through that, and they can keep you on that. and like designate you to return. Obviously, if it's a season-ending injury, you're not going to return. But if you do get put on IR, upon finishing, they like you, they can keep you. Or when you kind of finish your injury, or when you finish your injury recovery, they
Hmm.
can let you go. Potentially saying that, okay, you're like damaged goods, or we don't really see a future with you, things like that. And that does happen to a few more guys than it should, but that's the nature of the game, the business. The monster keeps going, and that's just kind of the nature of the business. For me, what happened, I think the Rams truly did believe that, okay, this is a guy that's starter level for us. He can contribute, and they didn't kind of give up on me on that facet. And that's kind of what happened. I was on IR, and there wasn't a split in my contract for when you get hurt, when you don't get hurt, which
Hmm.
it takes away a significant amount of your money. So that was really good for me. But if you don't have a split, if you do have a split, then you only make about like a very low percentage of your contract,
Wow.
essentially.
Yeah.
So that happens majority of the time. I mean, that's the majority of NFL contracts. Um, Working through that is a tough thing, and in particular because you plan for certain things, and financially you think you're going to move a certain way, and it may or may not go that way, depending on how your contracts are structured.
All right. So let's take us all the way to the present, and then I want to back up, talk about some stuff from college
Hmm.
again. But so we go through the Rams through 23 season with the Rams, then that would have been correct, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then last you and I spoke, and I'll just be honest with folks, like you and I spoke a month or two ago, something along those lines, and you were heading off to Seattle, right?
Mhm.
And you were a free agent. There you are. You head off to Seattle, and take us through to the present then.
Present. See, after I got through with last year, coming off my injury, came back, had a great year. Um, didn't get to start like I wanted to, but came in and I was very valuable to the team. I entered free agency this January. As soon as I released from the team, contract was up. I got picked up by Seattle in March, right when free agency started. Ended up going to go through OTAs with them, and then it came to the beginning of training camp, like literally the first day. As soon as I got back to town, they're saying, "Hey, we're gonna release you." Um, not a didn't really give you a chance, didn't really give you a reason or anything. They just said they're
Wow.
releasing you. And, mostly teams are kind of full by training camp. Um, and that was tough. But then I ended up going to the Saints a couple days later, getting on their training camp. Actually, I went to the Jets first for a workout, but then the Saints signed me right when the workouts basically started. And then I flew to Irvine, California, where they did their training camp. Spent a month with them, made it to the last cuts, and then I was released then. And now here I am today. I'm a free agent.
What's that like? I mean, I think, you know, tr- building a players associate. I guess I talk with former players all the time, many of whom have similar stories, or that's a real good story, right? Compared to most of pretty long. Here we are, year 4, year 5, and but I think there's what can a players association do for former college players, or in your case, someone who's NFLPA, former player? Is there a role that the union can play either at the pro level for guys who, let's say, don't have the 10-year career, right? It seems like, at least from my perspective as an outsider looking in, that
Mhm.
if you're an NFL player and, man, you've got a 6, 7, 8, 10, 10, 11, 12 year, whatever, long career, that the union works pretty darn well for you in terms of what life is like after your playing days are done. And it's guys who maybe have shorter careers or even mid-range careers that maybe, like, where is the union for guys who are kind of in a similar position to you, or what has your interaction been with the NFLPA throughout your career in terms of how does it provide support to players at different levels and with different lengths of career?
It's a good question. The PA of the union in the NFL is really good. They, been working very, very hard throughout all the years that they've been kind of incepted, because like those are, that's the thing. You want representation at all levels, whether you're the starter, whether you guy on the roster, whether you're a practice squad player, whether you're a rookie or 20-year vet. Like that's what you want. You want your union and to work for you. You want your players association to understand that, hey, your story matters, you matter,
Hmm.
regardless of where you are. And I think the NFLPA has done an amazing job at that for me. Even currently, right now, like through the NFLPA trust that they have, that if you've acquired at least 4 years, they set you up with training. They set you up with programs that help you kind of get whatever your legal status is, as far as like, okay, where do you need to be as far as injuries? How does that affect your health? There are mental health programs. There are financial programs. There are um, different employment options that you can go through and talk to other players, and they do a good job of connecting you to other players who may or may not have had your story, which there are probably people that have. I mean,
Hmm.
this game is it's up and down for everybody, no matter
Yeah.
how long you've been here.
Yeah.
um, and like that's something that you really need from an association, is that power to connect, that power to educate, that power to equip you. And dealing with my representative in the team I've been on, they've been really good at that. They've been really outspoken. They've been really good at just continuing to communicate. Hey, you're protected in this way, or if this is happening, you can tell someone. You don't have to be afraid to speak up for yourself or your teammates or your needs. And they've really been helpful throughout my whole career, not just now, where I find myself kind of on the outside looking in, but they've always had my back, even through the COVID stuff that was really difficult to
Yeah.
navigate, through franchising stuff, that if you the Madden or jerseys or anything like that, excuse me. And then as far as like making sure that they the coaches and the teams and the organizations do what they say they're going to do, and don't overstep, and that you fulfill your side of it. So having a players union like that is a really good feeling, because then it assures that I can go out and be the best possible person and athlete that I can be, knowing that I've got somebody that has my back and my best interest at heart.
That's awesome. Very well said. This is all right. So it doesn't surprise me to hear you say this because um, let's transition what we're doing to College Football Players Association. When I've at this point, I have probably had, I would say, close to 1,000 conversations with former players. Right. I mean, it's my daily life. It has been for quite some time. Um, if we talk about, okay, yeah, part of what we're trying to do at College Football Players Association is, sure, we want to, it's legible for current players, particularly at that top level, Clemson level of play. If we say something like, yeah, we want to do something like the NFLPA does for NFL players, we want collective representation. You guys need a CBA. I think at this point in the top level of play for college football, this is a no brainer, right? But that's one level of things. To get there, I always felt like you needed to have more of a community building organization, like past, present, future players come together and get to know people like outside of your own program, outside of your own network, create a new network, right? And so when I talk with former players, if I feel like the conversation is progressing in a certain way, I'll say, hey, do you want to become an alumni member? Right. And on our first call, for you, this was a no brainer, right? You asked me questions. We maybe talked for whatever it was, 30, 45 minutes. And you were like, oh, yeah, absolutely, right? Like $50 a year. And then I asked you later on, pretty recently, become a lifetime member, which is a one-time donation, significant donation to help our operations. And you were like, absolutely, no problem. All right. But then, as you and I have talked about, there's been the other side of things where I have conversations with former players and it's kind of like, why would I do this? Right. And so where it doesn't connect in the same way it did for you. Speak to that then. Why was it so easy for you? And there's other conversations. Justin Falcinelli, you mentioned, right? Super easy, super straightforward. Other guys you played with. But
Mhm.
then for other guys, man, it is really the exact opposite. Where I say, hey, we need to build this big network to put in place a kind of support system for former players once we get this thing big enough. Why do some guys, do you think, see the vision, and why was it so, or not see the vision, and why was it so easy for you?
For me, I've in the past, like I'm an offensive lineman, and when we think about team, when we think about, I'll just say when I think about team, I'm not going to speak for every offensive lineman out there, but
Yeah.
like you you have to think about it as a group collective. You have to think about it as we're all in this together. Like the experiences of all of us, matter, and those experiences are going to help shape what is to come, right? You have to say that, okay, my story, whatever happened to me, I can use that to teach the next guy that comes along and is in similar situations so that he doesn't make the same mistakes as me. He understands that, what is expected of him, what he's protected from. And I think that's a team mentality. Like we're all in this. It's very hard to play college football, no matter what level you're at. And we all, have very lofty goals. We all want to be successful. And I think some of those guys can be jaded sometimes, or like, oh, this
Mhm.
isn't helping me specifically, or this isn't helping me right now. Why invest in it? And I think that they're missing the bigger picture of it, right? They're missing that
Mhm.
this network, this togetherness really does create the foundations to start the spark. Like nothing great has ever come, you know, immediately. Nothing great has ever come uh, um, in a couple of days or a couple of years. It takes time. It takes many people. It takes many connections. It takes many networks to connecting like a web to create something very sturdy. And I think that for me, like I had grown up like that. My family supported
Hmm.
the whole community, and we understood that one person can make a difference. We understood that it is about us and not just me. And I
Hmm.
think that when the older guys kind of start seeing that, like, okay, think about like players that played back in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. I mean, they had it way tougher than we do.
Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness.
good God, you hear those stories, you're like,
Oh
ah,
God, you hear those stories, and I'm just like, holy cow! I can't believe people went through it.
exactly. So they look at us like, oh, well, you guys got it now. Like you're all taken care of.
Right?
Yeah, I don't mad. My dad played basketball at SC, and he
Huh.
couldn't get cream cheese on his bagel. They shut down the restaurants before he could even get out of practice. Like they had it really rough too. But if you asked him like, hey, what would you do this? Would you put your experience out there to help your son and his son? He'd be like, absolutely, let's do it. And I think that's the mentality that we have to strive for as football players as a whole.
Man, a bunch of that's going on the TikTok. I can tell you right now. That was,
I hope
I
so.
mean, I'm telling you that is it. I think so often what people don't get about what we're doing is, man, yeah, sure, we want to see CBAs, right? We want to see
Mhm.
guys on Clemson within their conference, let's say, to have a CBA. Of course, we want to see that. We want to see it look. And I think that'll create a more sustainable version of college football. Rules in place, everybody understands, real contracts, like all of
Mhm.
these things, right? But it is that community building piece, which I think a lot of people don't understand about what we're doing. Like, you think of how many former college football players there are in this country living. My best guess is like 2.5 million.
Easily.
And easily, all levels of play, it's got to be, right? It's got to be. And you think about the power of those people coming together, like that type of network and what you could do with that type of network.
Yeah.
Because I think let's speak to this because Clemson, my experience with Clemson and learning a lot about Clemson is that it is a little bit different, but I want you to speak to it from your personal experience. Okay.
Mhm.
I think the reason I asked you about the NFLPA is so if you're an NFL player, man, you have that other institution to lean on, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like, okay, yeah, you obviously have very positive experience with the PA, so that's great. All right. In college football, if you don't go on to the pros, you got your program in terms of maybe you got a network beyond that, but in terms of like, let's say you wanted to get a job or let's say you wanted some type of support, like, you see a lot of guys who will come back as alum to their programs, right? But my experience has been you're not always welcome. And it depends on who the coach is. And it depends on a lot of things. And then, so what we're trying to do is create a PA for college players who never made it to the pros, who need a support system that maybe their former program isn't providing. Right now, do you think Clemson is different? Because I've talked with a lot of Clemson players at this point, whole
Mhm.
lot, current players, former players. And there is this sort of vibe of like people tell it's different. Oh, it's different. And it's the support you get from the program once you're done is different. Do you agree with that? Has that been your experience as a player and a former player?
As a player, when I played at Clemson, yes, the support was immaculate. It was beyond words, right? Like the Clemson family really is what it says it is, and like I can't speak highly enough on that praise because not just at the university level from the president or the AB or the whoever, like those people for sure had your backs, and those people made sure that there were layers and layers of protection for you as far as like, hey, like we're gonna try to you know find out every way we can help you improve as a person, as a player, as a scholar, as a professional, and like that is A plus, and like that's something I was always so grateful that Clemson had. Um, Former players, I haven't had as much because I've been kind of
Yeah.
deep in my profession in NFL.
Hmm.
Um, but from what I'm told through my friends is that the support that the people at Clemson, the coaches, the officials, the head people, they've they've set up different categories as far as where you need to be, and you need help, right? You need professional help, all right? You want to get into coaching, all right? You need
Hmm.
different life skills. You need different things like that. And the web and network of Clemson alum is vast, and the amount of professionals that will reach back and help you that were put in place by a Coach Sweeney or a Graham Neff or Dan Radakovich who was there are
Hmm. Hmm.
vast, and those things are good. But that's not the same everywhere is what I'm hearing. Um,
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
from other people that are done playing or that didn't transition because only like one less than 1% even make it to the pros like that.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know what I mean? That's a tough number. That's why I
Mm.
think that's why I was all for. I mean, most people are all for the NIL stuff in the space because college athletics, not everybody makes it. Like that's just the game. It's a 99% fail rate as far as going pro. And that's why you have to have those layers of protection and readiness that not all schools are really, really good at. And they say they might be, but they're not as committed as they
Mm.
seem. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yep. Okay. All right. All right. Let's continue to speak on this Clemson stuff. Maybe make a little bit of news here, just in the sense of we have had the opportunity for a while now to talk with current players at Clemson,
Mhm.
and you know got a lot of alum involved. The way the whole thing is supposed to work is, yeah, we create this support system, this community building apparatus, from which then if we have alums who are really interested in getting back into their former programs, well, it creates a route to do that, right? And so Justin Falcinelli, he's also on our leadership committee. So while you were off in the league, Justin and I were hanging out at Clemson quite a lot over the past year. And one of the things we were doing there was talking with current players. Now, the conversation with them is different. Sure, we talk about the networking stuff, we talk about the life after football stuff, but the conversation you're having more with the current players are about collective bargaining. Like,
Mhm.
it's about how do you create a union that is really going to represent you guys, and how do you get, like, what's it look like to get from becoming a member to a collective bargaining agreement with the ACC, right? I mean, obviously that's a huge pathway, but that's really the conversation we're having with guys. All right, here's my experience from having had hundreds of conversations with
Yeah.
Clemson players at this point. Speak to those current players, because we've got a lot of current players signed up. We've got a lot of, and none of these guys is dragging their own school. None of these guys is like, oh, I want to do this because I hate Clemson. It's not that at all, right?
Mhm.
They're doing it because they all have their different reasons, but I think providing a sort of sustainable rule structure, whatever, right? But we
Yeah.
do have guys that we've had a lot of conversations with, and maybe they're just not there yet, right?
Yeah.
Um, what would you say to guys like right now? Let's say a guy is making $150,000 a year
Mhm.
from a collective or from brand deals or whatever, right? So he pulls together a pretty good amount of money, right? Especially compared to back when you were playing when it was zero, right? And
Right.
so let's say that guy's making $150,000 a year, and maybe this just, oh, I'm going on the league. This is like a stopping point for me. I don't really, this isn't really something that I want to get involved with. This is like I'll be here for a few years and then I'm done.
Yeah.
What would you say to move a player like that? Because obviously, I think you would have thought differently when you were a current player. You certainly are
Mhm.
there now. Speak to that current player on Clemson. What do you tell him if he's on the fence?
I would tell him that one, it's bigger than you. You got to think about the guy that's not getting that $150,000 pulling it in.
Mm,
Think
mm,
about the guy who's busting his ass just as hard as you, or may not have gotten opportunities, but he needs protection as well. Think about how much of this is you're not biting the hand that feeds you. I think that's the kind of mentality that we all, especially at Clemson, where we are really blessed, we are really grateful for how much we do get, and we have, world class advisors. We have world class people like Paul Journey and everything that Jeff Davis
mm,
has built and
mhm,
Randy has
mhm,
built. Like those are amazing, and not to say that you're not grateful for those things, but you have to think about what's bigger picture, how can we build something sustainable and strong for the future, so it's not just 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% of us getting that, but it's everybody benefiting from what we've built. Not only just you guys there, but you guys are standing on the shoulders of what we've built, especially our class and the classes before me, and I'm standing on the shoulders of what they built, because my dad didn't get a stipend.
hmm,
He went to bed
mhm,
hungry. My dad didn't pull in all this money at these schools. You're standing on school grounds that were built by players. A lot of money
yeah,
generated by.
God.
Come on now, you're putting money.
Oh,
You're feeding the coaches' pockets. You're feeding the AD's pockets. You're feeding all of these professionals, and you got to understand that when it comes to benefiting and when it comes to taking care of yourself and holistically, it has to be more. It has to be
mm,
beyond that, because you do deserve it, right?
mm.
The people behind you deserve it, and the people in front of you will deserve it, because this machine is going to turn, and the only way this machine goes is through the players.
Well said. Two follow-ups here. Two different things you said. Okay.
Too.
Um, First, I've been to Clemson many times now.
Mhm.
I will be completely honest. Before I went to Clemson for that first time, and before I started focusing on the world of college football, I didn't know where Clemson was. I
Mhm.
literally didn't know what state it was in. Okay. Now, I don't think after having been there now many times, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that to the extent that people know where Clemson is, literally geographically, I think it's because of the football players. I
Easily.
think
Yeah.
easily,
Easily.
right? I mean, I went there and I was talking with a bunch of former players at the time, and it was an event, and it was very nice. But they're looking out at the town and they're like, none of this was here when I was here 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever it was, right? And the reason you can build those condos in Clemson, South Carolina, it's in South Carolina. By the way, I think it's one of the most beautiful cities. I really do. Like I go back. Actually like I enjoy going back now because it's like it is such a beautiful place to be. Um,
Yeah,
but man, you look like I think that is something that is just completely undervalued is the way in which football players literally build communities. If you win championships, those condos that go up everywhere, the surge of undergraduate enrollment, all of these things, it's because of your guys' labor, is it not?
it is. It is 1,000%. Like that's something that you cannot undervalue when you come to the table. When you talk to like when you talk to the schools, when you talk to other players, like you have to understand the power that you possess. If every college football player is united, we don't just speak for ourselves. We speak for the generation behind and in front of us, right?
Mm,
If we decide like, hey, we don't want to play unless you take care of everybody, not just me, not just the top two players, not just the top
mm,
five players, the top
mhm,
100 players. And I think that's really hard in any type of players association or union, is that there are the top layer guys that want themselves taken care of, but it's really about the bottom 90%. That's really where it's at, right? Like it takes everybody to make this go. And if no one's playing and we all are united force, the power that you guys have, that we have as past, present, and future players is immeasurable. I mean, it's the kind of thing that moves mountains, right? But I think we have to get out of our own selves, and that's hard to do, right? Because
Oh,
you work
yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
your career is finite,
Yep.
and essentially you're just an ant, right, in a huge colony of ants. But if you work together, if you have the same common goals, and you put one another in front of yourselves, then the amount of things that you can do are infinite, right?
Man, yeah, this is great. This is great. My other follow up that I want to touch on. There's a word you've used it several times here in the course of our conversation. Protections. Say that over and over again, right? And that's a word I use a lot. I think there's a lot of, that's a. What does that mean to you? What? Because I think sometimes people who like aren't advocates, who aren't players, hear that word protections and they think it has like a negative connotation in some way, right? It's like, oh, what do you need to be protected from? We're doing right by guys, right? There can be that sort of defensive
Right, right.
response to hearing that word, right? And so, elaborate a little bit for me. What do you when you use that word protection or protections? It, what do college football? What kind of protections do? What does that word mean to you? And then, what kind of protections do college football players need in your mind?
In my mind, when I hear protections, um, football's a dangerous game, right? Like people act like we're out there playing catch or we're just handing out flags or whatever. Like, no, football's a dangerous game. Like you can hurt yourself for the rest of your life, your
Yep.
natural born life, if you're out there and you are just doing your job. I mean, hey, look at me. Like I was just doing my job as a lineman, minding my business, and then my leg snaps in three pieces, right? That's going to affect me for the rest of my life. And um, thank God that there are protections in place where you can have an IR, you can still protect your career going forward. You can protect your mental. You can have insurances that
Mm,
take care of you in your physical and your mental, because that's what's going to take care of your family.
mm,
Um, Also, making sure that you're protected from the schools and different corporations that, again, like not all colleges do this, but there are colleges that want to just use you, and if
yep.
they can just have their way and use you like you're a piece of property, then they will,
Yep.
because it's in their best interest. If you're not educated, right, if you're ignorant, it helps them.
Yep.
They can kind of move how they want to move, and you don't know. Well, you don't know what you know. You just want to play ball, like you're a kid, right? You just want to do things. And I think you need to be protected from entities, right? As a
Mm,
young man, you need to know that, hey, they can't just say these things and not do them. They
mm,
can't just tell you to do this and not protect you from, you know, being used or not getting what you are worth as a player. Don't just believe that you're just some insignificant person. Like, no, you are a piece of this machine that is very valuable in this billion-dollar business. You need
Mm.
to have insurances. There is no other industry in the world where, I mean, even in the Supreme Court saw one look at the NCAA and was like, "Hey, what are we doing here? Like,
I know.
what are we talking about, right? You guys are the money drivers."
Yep.
That's why they settled. Like, that's why that there is that lawsuit that they're settling on, and they are going to pay,
Mm,
because it is
mm,
easy to see that you 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 are a big piece of this, and like, you need to be protected from instances. You need to be protected from false advertising or contracts, or people saying this and doing this, or if a coach leaves or you get
mm.
hurt. How are you going to take care of yourself in 10 years? You can't work the same because you've given your body to your university, and you cannot, get the care that you need to
Yep.
recover, or get the mental health that the mental health screening and protections that you need, and all of that thing kind of works together as far as like protections, right? Like mentally, physically, financially. Again, dangerous game, and it's a fun game, but it's also a dangerous game that we need insurances to go into full go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you're speaking right into our platform, right? I mean, the platform we have, 7 Point platform. 4 of those planks are specifically health and safety related, right? They're specifically about protections after the game. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, again, it's like after the game, there's so many guys I've spoken with at this point, never had a pro career. Not one snap, never got an opportunity. They were part of the 97.5% or whatever it is, the guys who never go on and play pro ball, right? And they've got injuries though. And they've got injuries that weren't accounted for on their exit interview. They got in, they're 40 years old and they're still suffering from from their playing days, right? I mean, that is a reality I think that just most people don't understand. Let me add one other thing I definitely wanted to get to, because again, you're the first player. We've had another guest who had a very short NFL career, but it was a long time ago. You're in the midst of it right now.
Yeah.
And one of our planks, as you know, is about creating a practice environment within college that is similar to what we see in the NFL.
Mhm.
So, can you speak to that? Just as someone who obviously, all your years playing at Clemson and practicing at Clemson, right?
Yeah.
During those off seasons, during those fall camps, which are, speak to all of that, just that experience and how it, and I don't want to assume that it is, I am assuming it is. To what extent is it different in the pros? Like, describe the practice environment at college and the practice environment in the pros, because that has been regulated, right? Highly by the NFLPA, by
Mhm.
those collective bargaining agreements to create a practice environment, which I would just describe as saner, safer, right? Would you agree with that assessment though, as a player, or not?
Yeah, from my experiences, as
Yeah.
far as like when I played from 16 to 20, um, we had a lot of rough practice, like, and that was, there has to be a balance between protecting your body. Again, this is your body; these are your assets. This is your livelihood. Most players have spent a decade plus investing in this craft that they've called their profession. And
Mhm.
there has to be a line of chasing an edge, getting your work done, but being smart and protecting the players. In college, it was a lot more toughness oriented. There was a lot more. There was
Mhm.
mat drills. There was fall camps. There was spring conditioning. There was summer conditioning. There was a lot more things um, that kind of puts you in that spot of you know strengthening and breaking down the body. There was a balance to it. In the professional space, it's much more up to the player how they can go about that
Hmm.
in majority of the time. Obviously, in the pros, you do get after it a lot more in like fall camp and different points of the season, but there's a lot of times where you do ramp it down, and it's a much more mental, because again, these are very, very, you know, we'll just call it high assets as far as the players, right? They drive the
Hmm.
money. They drive why people come to see the games, right? They come to
Hmm.
see the players play. And if there isn't a high level product on that field because people are hurt, that isn't good. If people are out there, being asked to do things in a way that's too much, or it can be
Hmm.
borderline of dangerous, then you're really hurting a player who's invested his whole life into his body, and now you're just throwing his shoulder, his head, his ankle, his knee into the garbage over the sake of toughness, when there are better ways to approach the process. And that's what it
Mm,
all is. It's just monitoring the process to where you can push players, you can get this toughness out of you that is essential for disciplining young guys, but you can protect them in the same way. You can take care of them as if they were your own kids, right?
mm.
You don't just look at them as just machines or property or tools, but they're people and they're assets of your corporation, your business.
Mm.
Obviously, it's a program, it's an organization, but these are your money drivers. You have kids enrolling to watch, to be a part of this team, this family. You have people watching, investing, and donors that want to see the best product. So it's in the best interest of not only the players, but it's in the best interest of the fans, the school, the organization, the donors, if we put a better process in place of protecting players while still chasing that edge.
Well said. To what extent, and we can end here. To what extent would you? Is it possible? Let me ask it different. Is it possible to bring the practice environment that you experienced at the pro level, the one that's regulated by a CBA, one that does see the individual player as more valuable, right?
Yeah,
Um, is it possible to bring that into college football? Because a lot of people sort of have really pushed back at that plank of our platform, right? Like, no, 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 that's not how you got to develop guys. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, right? And I
mhm,
have sympathy for it, but at the same time, it's like, yes, but what if it was your son? How do you want your son to be taken care of? That's always what I say to people, right? I have a son, and I always think, oh, how would I want my son to? Well, then that's how I should want every other son to be taken care of, right?
mhm.
I think that's the only way I've found to personalize it with people. If there's a barrier here when you're talking about college ball, it's like, no, 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 we got to develop guys. What's the answer? Give me like an answer when I have people say that and they don't, you know, they don't see it like you just articulated. Instead, I don't know, they just view it as fundamentally different than pro ball. Pro ball, you protect the assets, it's different, and that all makes sense. But at college, you can kind of do whatever you want is almost like the attitude, you know?
Yeah.
What's the response to somebody like that?
Well, they're taking it as like, all right, well, they're young and they heal and all that things, but these are high level athletes colliding with other high level athletes, and then not everybody recovers the same. And I think that you have to look at their process. If they need to like beat a horse into the ground to get the best out of it, is your process really that good?
Mhm.
Are
Right.
you really developing them if you have to completely break them down, right? I'm listen. I played football for a long time, and there is some truth to that. It's a tough game. This is not a patty cake league in any
Yeah.
play. And like those guys out there, like there's some big college players. There's some big, fast, strong young men out there that are young and that do need molding in a way that's like you can take that same mentality of pressuring and attacking the process and really pushing guys and disciplining them, but you can do it in a smart way. And we don't do the same things that we did in the 90s.
Yeah, right, right.
We just don't. Like we don't
Yep.
do the same processes we do in the 2000s.
Mm,
We're smarter than that. We have the technology, we have the tracking device, we have the data, we can manage. And I think that if you just put a better process there, you can still get your work. You can still push people in the off season and in
mm,
the spring and in the summer and the fall camps. But when it
mm,
comes to practices for games, there has to be like you have to keep improving the progression. You know what I mean? It has to keep
mhm,
building upon itself. And I get it. Young men need discipline. Young men need rigid schedules and toughness and all of that. That's 100% agreeing with that. You can get that same result, but you can also protect them in the same way,
mm.
right?
Yep, yep. Well said. Well, I think that's a good place to end. Um, I just want to say publicly here just how much I appreciate you and everything you've done for this organization thus far. I think, it's been a long, hard road to get to the point where, we feel like we have an organizing breakthrough here soon. But man, you were with us in the sort of days where it's like, "Oh, where's this going exactly?" Right. And every former player who got involved during those days is greatly appreciated. And you've been around ever since. And, you know, I wish the Lord's favor shine down upon you as you work to continue your NFL career. But whenever that ends up not being the case, whether it's now or 2 or 5 years from now, or whenever his plan is, I just want to say I can't wait to have you more sort of working within this organization, because everything you just said is just so powerful. And I think coming from somebody like yourself that's had high level college career, two national championships, Super Bowl at the pro level, it's deeply personally meaningful for me. And I just want to make sure everybody hears that, and just how much I appreciate you and all you've done for us.
That means a lot, Jason. Honestly, coming from you, because not everybody sees what you do. I mean, honestly, like that's the thing. Like this doesn't just come out of thin air. There has to be a driver. There has to be a visionary, and you've kind of been there the whole way through from inception to here. I mean, like the hours, the conversations, the work, the travel. Like no one's gonna see that, right? Like everyone talks
Mhm.
about like the product that you get later on, the unions, the PA, people have protections and all this stuff, but they don't see these people that go out their way and didn't have to. I mean, you got a family you got to take care of. You got a job that you have to work, but you take that time to really invest in people that may not ever know who you are, right? And God, it just gets my piss hot thinking about it, because like that's the kind of things that my family was based on, right? I live off the backs and the shoulders of people I never will ever see, and that really means a lot to me. And I know that's going to mean a lot to my son one day or my daughter one day. And I just want to thank you publicly, Jason, for everything you've done.
Very kind of you, Trey. Very kind of you. All right. This is a great episode. I love this is so fun to do. I mean, this is my fourth now, and I just can't wait for these to continue. But this has been my favorite so far. Um, Tremayne Anchrum is our guest today. Tremayne, this is the College Football Players Association podcast. Tremayne is the Alumni Member of the Month for September of 2024. We can't wait to see you in October. We have a good follow up then with a guest who's going to continue the health and safety conversation as we talk about health and safety in college football and how to make it better through the entire month of October. Take care.
Take care, man.